Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome back to School Sojourn. I'm your host, Jeff Turner, as always. Andrea is not able to be with us tonight because she is traveling, doing God's work, no doubt. But she sends you her love, she sends you her greetings, and all of that good stuff, and we send ours to her as well. Now, I don't want to take a whole lot of time rambling through introductions because I know when it comes to the former, I am very good at that. We want to hop right into the show tonight and into the conversation we're going to have. We're blessed, privileged, whatever word you want to use, to welcome to the show tonight Reverend Michael Carter, who is an author, who is a ufologist, who's a frequent contributor to programs, shows such as Ancient Aliens. I'm sure many of you will already be familiar with him and with his work. I was fortunate to meet Michael several months back in September at a UFO conference that we were both speaking at in Houghton Lake, Michigan, and just felt an instant connection with him. And I'm really honored to welcome him to the show tonight and really interested to see where the conversation goes. So if we could bring Michael on. There you are.
Brother Turner.
Hey.
Brother Jeff, how
Welcome,
are you, man?
My friend.
You're looking good, man. I like it. I know I said it before the show, and it's nice, that kind of salt and pepper. And I got to tell you, you still look pretty young, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you're looking pretty good yourself, my friend. Looking pretty good.
Brother. Well, I'm pickled. I'm well pickled. I'm well preserved.
Hey, that salt and pepper, I'm told people now pay for this look. So I'm like,
They do.
Yeah.
They do, brother.
And some of us,
and you got it naturally. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly. My wife always said I always was like, oh, should I diet? And she's like, no, she likes the salt and pepper. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just go with it. Let's go.
And you always got to check in with headquarters. So if they say, if they like it, leave it.
That's a wise move. Always check in with headquarters.
Yeah, it took me 3 marriages to get that.
Hey, yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for coming on. I know it was kind of last minute, but
it's okay. It worked out. It worked out.
And so we had a conversation not too long ago. You were on my podcast, Religionless. That episode is still in the cooker because I'm still waiting to get my base 10 episodes recorded so I can just parse them out a little piece by piece over the coming months. But I'm really looking forward to releasing that. We had a great conversation then. You and I first met, as I said in the intro, at the UFO Contact Conference in Houghton Lake, Michigan. And we had a good time, man. We had a good time.
Man.
And I don't know. I felt like an instant connection with you before we even talked. And
listen, I did too. And then I think listening to you talk kind of sealed the deal. I know it's going to sound like a mutual admiration society, and why shouldn't it? But just the depth of your thinking. I mean, outside, your personality, that kind of thing. But you're a deep thinker, and I always appreciate that. I can always learn. And so, and we've kind of kept it going. And what's beautiful about it, at least one of the things, is we pick up where we left off. We have our own lives. I'm in this part of the country. You got your family, I got my family. We're doing our thing. But, we reach out, you'll reach out, and we just pick up where we left off. And I think that's where the true connection lies.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, man. And so, Michael, why don't you just take a few moments, as long as you want, really, and just tell us about yourself a little bit. I know many of the viewers will already know who you are, but some might not. And for the sake of those who don't, or for the sake of those who maybe
we'll get reacquainted.
Yeah, but let's just get reacquainted. So tell us a little about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story, your background, how you got to where you are now, what you're doing, and then we'll kind of use that as a launch pad to see where we go tonight, man.
Okay. My name is Michael Carter. I'm an interfaith minister. I have a master's degree from Union Theological Seminary in New York City. I am an experiencer. I'm a father. I'm a husband. My friends would say I'm many things, and so would people who don't like me. But I was raised in the African American Baptist tradition, and so I was steeped in biblical culture. I pursued the life of the mind, and I still do. Even though I don't identify as a Baptist anymore, that's in me. I'm a person. I'm a man of the West. I was educated in the West. And so that's always a part of my Weltanschauung, my worldview. And as an experiencer, my focus shifted to deeper subjects, if you will. I was kind of asleep, and this was like a cold glass of water in my face. It shattered my reality, and so I've been on this journey. I was on the journey before my experiences, but I think this kind of expedited them. One of the things that I really work intentionally at doing is realizing that those experiences are part of my life, but they don't define me. I meet a lot of experiences that if you're not talking about ufology, there's really no connection. And, you know, outside of the birth of my child, one of the defining moments of my life. But like I said, I have a family. Life is to be lived, and so I'm very intentional about that. And so when I went public, you know, I wrote a few books, and I got the attention of the History Channel and appear on some of their programs, Ancient Aliens being one of them. And so this has been my life. I have a congregation. We just became a mid-sized congregation. We have about 154 members now. That's very recent. That's as of 2 weeks ago. And so I live here in North Carolina, spent almost 30 years in New York City. I was in the professional theater at that time. And so it's been an interesting journey. And so here we are in 2023 with what's the old Chinese, I won't call it a curse, a proverb, may you live in interesting times. And we certainly do, brother. And so here we are. Yeah. And I'm trying to stay on the love train, you know. I believe that love is the glue that holds it all together. And I don't mean that as kind of woo-woo. I mean that I believe that. I try to live that. And so with all that's going on around me, all the distractions and just all the events, they're not all distractions, obviously, but I just try to be as authentic as I possibly can in my dealings with to coin the Dalai Lama's phrase with all sentient life.
Yeah. Well, you know, Michael, one of the things that I so resonated with when I heard you speak, your talk was great. Everything you said was great. Your spirit was wonderful. Like I said, I instantly connected with you.
Yeah, we both had that. We both had that with each other.
Yeah. But when I heard you talk about how your experiences, now correct me if I'm wrong or if I have the order of events wrong, but you were either studying to be a minister or were a minister.
Yes.
When you
Yes, I was a minister and I was going for my master's degree.
Yeah. And then you began to have experiences, right?
Yes.
And it shook your faith.
Woo.
Which such experiences are wont to do, right? And it messed with your worldview and with your paradigm. And I found that so interesting because really the main kind of world that I work in is in what is called within the construction movement. That's what kind of and so mostly people come from conservative Christian backgrounds, mostly conservative evangelical fundamentalist backgrounds, who for one reason or another experienced or some kind of let's just say ending of their faith. And so it was interesting to hear from your perspective that you had this experience that was sort of not necessarily paranormal, but it was, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure if you're having trouble seeing me. I'm getting an error message here that I'm having trouble connecting. So I think that I'm coming through, but I'm not sure at this point.
Jeff, you may.
So I apologize if you guys aren't seeing my screen's going blank. So
you might want to jump back out and come back in. You're breaking up a little bit.
If you can. join? Okay.
But I'm going to remove him. I'm going to kick him so he can come back in. But did you get the gist of that question?
No,
Mike?
I didn't.
All right. I'm thinking that people, well, we'll see if he comes back, but people of faith, and they have these kind of experiences. Does that conflict with their religious beliefs in any way? Should it? Or is it totally two different things that we're dealing with here?
Got it. Okay. When he comes on, I'll deal with that question.
Maybe that's just a question from me, but I think that's what he was trying to say. It was
okay. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I was going to tell him that we were having some technical difficulties. But yeah, it's a great question. I think, Bill, that it depends, and I'm not trying to be coy. It depends on the individual. I think that those kind of luminous, and they don't have to be contact. They could be, OBEs. They could be near-death experiences. I know someone who had an experience jogging on a beach and just seeing the sun come up at 5:30 in the morning in San Francisco. So I think it's where the individual is. I don't think now the way I look at the Bible is I'm looking at people who are trying to describe these experiences, and they don't have any really words for them. I happen to think that that our ancestors in the Bible are talking about extraterrestrial contact, but it doesn't have to be as dramatic as all that. They will have you question your reality. Oscar Wilde said that once the mind is stretched, I'm paraphrasing, it can't go back to its original dimensions. And so for me, I had to re-examine what I thought I believed in light of the experiences I was having. Now, I was fortunate. I had a therapist down the line who I had the courage to bring it up to. I also was regressed. So I was hanging on by the skin of my teeth, but my life had changed. My worldview had changed. And so I had to, I didn't want to put old wine in new wineskins. So I was raised in the Baptist Christian tradition. I had to re-examine that. And I'm still re-examining it. In the sense of just recently, I've started going back and looking through my Bible. I'm starting to look at kind of geopolitical situations and those kind of things. And so I'm always peeling the onion. And that's what it causes us to do. The unexamined faith is not worth having.
No, I agree. Like every time I think of the Bible for this kind of context, I think of Ezekiel, the wheel within the wheel. And I'm like, creatures, there's certain words that are used that is kind of separate from what the rest of the Bible says. You know what I mean? That's Ezekiel is like one of those cases. Could that have been a sighting in the Bible?
I think people are seeing it, even people who are not clergy. I was looking on Amazon today. There's so many books now on the UFOs and the Bible. And I don't want to just keep it here, but by experiencers who may not have any biblical training at all. But this is the progression, the evolution after 20 years. Jeff and I know I'm kind of jumping, we were talking about this messianic kind of, still this kind of savior perspective when people say, well, the Nordics or the good ETs are going to come and save us. And we'll touch on that tonight, I'm sure. But I want to get back to Brother Turner's question and your question.
All right. So welcome back, Jeff. Have a great rest of the show, guys.
Thank you so much. And so, Jeff, we were kind of riffing on that. But it made me re-examine my faith, what I could keep and what kind of I felt really wasn't serving me. The theological piece had changed for me. I'm still examining. Just recently, I heard someone talk about, and I had heard this before, that when Jesus comes along, he's talking about a different entity than Yahweh. And that one could argue, and I'm starting to peel the onion back, that Jesus is not talking, Yahweh is not the God he's talking about. It's certainly not the Father he's talking about. So, but again, these experiences will, they don't have to be contrary to one another, but they will cause you, if you're honest, to re-examine. They will cause you to be uncomfortable and to challenge what it is that you believe, because what I believe at 66 was not the same thing I believed at 36. And may not believe the same thing that I believe 5, 10, 15 years from now. I mean, the basic template will be there, but maybe, it's like a painting. When you first put your, brush on the canvas, broad strokes. But as the picture starts to form, you tweak here, we'll take care of this, just things like that.
Yeah. No, and I found that so fascinating about your story, simply because I interact often with so many people who have had the quote unquote classical deconstruction experience, where they lose their traditional faith, maybe because they started asking questions, they started reading outside of the, prescribed reading list.
Which is what I did.
Yes. And then the fact that in the midst of all of that, in the midst of kind of all, this is what I love. And I guess maybe this is kind of what I want to crack open and see what you think about this. Is I love the fact that the experiences that we have, whether they're of a paranormal sort, whatever, just something that's outside of the realm of what we would call normal life. That they usually end up being something like a mirror for what's going on in us internally. Now, whether that's happening as a result of what's happening internally, or if it's a result of us kind of projecting onto it what's happening internally, it usually ends up happening like that. And what I loved about your story was that it was like you had cracked open your soul to quote unquote alien concepts that were, let's say, not indigenous to your faith tradition. And then at the same time, you begin having experiences with entities that are also alien to your experience, quite literally. And I love the correlate there, because I always believe that there's an archetypal correlate to what's happening inside of us, or there's an external, or there's an internal correlate to what's happening externally. Feuerbach talked about God as being a projection, right? And so that God is essentially man projecting himself out into the cosmos, and then what returns to him is an image of himself that he sees as being God in some sense, right?
We create God in our own image,
for sure. And some take that more the radical atheist route, and then say, well, then the concept of God is just fiction and bullshit because it's just us. But I think it's bigger than that. I think, if nothing else, what's happening in experiences like that is that consciousness is becoming aware of itself, right? I mean, Carl Jung said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will guide and control your life, and you'll
we'll call it fate,
right? And that's a very famous quote by him. But I think that's one way that the unconscious, whether it's the individual psyche or maybe the more collective unconscious, I think that's one way that it makes itself conscious to itself. It's kind of like, if there's a problem with your eye, you're not aware of it until you become aware of it, right? And so when the eye begins to notice itself, let's say there's a cataract forming or something like that, and you began to see maybe halos around light, then the eye is becoming aware of itself. Normally, the eye isn't aware of itself. It's aware of other things. But when it begins to become aware of itself, well, then it can address whatever issue there might be going on with it. And so there are times where the unconscious makes itself conscious by projecting itself onto a set of external events so that it can return to us to teach us something about what's happening in here, whether in here is us as individuals or in here, which is us as a collective, so we can address these things.
Well, it reminds me of the quote, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are.
Yeah.
And so there is truth to that.
Yeah.
What the experience did for me And what my evolution of my theology did for me, it made me responsible. To live is to be responsible.
Yeah.
And in some ways, and I want to be careful how I phrase it, but I'm going to phrase it, I don't need a savior. I need, and I don't particularly, well, I'm not even going to qualify it. I don't believe that. I was taught that I did, but in my evolution, that doesn't work for me anymore. There's a power in being able to take responsibility, and whether I've done something right or wrong, and that I can say, I did that. If it was wrong, I did that. I am responsible. And tying that into, I think that's what it means to grow up. I think it's what it means to be a human being. And so I'm looking at events in the world now. I talk to other experiencers, obviously, and people who aren't experiencers. But there's this notion that someone else will come and fix it. We're on the brink of nuclear or some type of catastrophic event. You're talking about consciousness, and I think that's what happened. My consciousness changed. Fancy word for awareness.
Yes.
And collectively, that I'm not an island unto myself. I belong to this collective, and so keeping that in mind. Now I'm responsible. It's not just me and my wants and desires, and it's all about me. I belong to a collective, right or wrong, fortunately or unfortunately. And so, and I left the Jesus is going to save me.
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking. But there's part of the UFO community, a vague term, but I'll use it, that the extraterrestrials will come and save us. They're going to push us to the brink. Not they, but what we're going to do. And some of it sounds logical. Yes, when you split the atom, you also, there's reverberations in other dimensions. Some of these beings travel in other dimensions, and so they're going to come and stop it. And maybe, but I would like to live my life not depending on that. And so that's what the experience, my interpretation of it. Now, that may be true. Jesus may come back physically and separate the sheep from the goats and all that. And then I got a problem because I rejected that. And so we'll work that out. Or there may be off-world intelligences who will keep us from, or Putin or NATO from messing with this nuclear reactor and hitting it by mistake or what have you. But I can't live my life, waiting for that.
Yeah.
And so it made me grow up. It made me grow up. Not that those who believe it aren't.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for them. That's their journey. But for me, I needed to grow up. I needed to put my big boy pants on. There was a time in my life where I just loved older women. I dated older women. Yes, there were less games to be played. There was the experience. It was attractive. But, I was looking for mama. Okay? You cut away the fat, you spit out the bones. And I had to go, wait a minute, let me grow up here. Let me look at myself. Of course, there was therapy, hypnosis, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it made me reevaluate, what I believed. Did I believe in a three-tiered universe? Did I believe in a God that was going to barbecue me for eternity because of what I said, believe? I had to say, wait a minute, that's not where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I was just meditating on something today myself. It came about as a result of a Facebook post that popped up in my memories that I shared last year. And I was reading it and I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought that you had that I forgot that I had. But I basically just said something akin to, all spiritual technologies, whatever they are, some kind of ritual scripture reading, whatever. The purpose of that is to ultimately show you what you already have. And so insofar as that technology is serving the purpose of revealing to you who and what you already are, even though you may need to grow up into it and become it through a process of maturity, you don't really need something external. And whatever that technology is, it exists to show you that. And I think of Jesus, you know, who says to his disciples, it's better for you that I go away, because if I don't go away, the comforter will never come. In other words, you'll never learn.
You'll never grow.
Yeah.
You'll never grow.
Yeah. You'll never learn the reality of the internal spirit that guides you and moves you. That's really, you know, you're going to just live your whole life looking for something outside of you. So it's better for you that I go away. It's better for you that you feel an absence that is actually a presence that is within you coming forth. And anyways, I was just thinking about that, and I was thinking about your story as well. And that's kind of why I threw that out to you, because it was like you encounter the quote unquote alien. And I'm speaking, of course, in metaphorical terms.
Sure.
But you encounter the quote unquote alien, and ideas and images like that play off of things in our minds. You encounter the alien. It introduces you to a world that is quote unquote alien, a faith that is, it changes everything about you. And it ultimately introduces you to an alien concept, which is that you don't need something outside of you to save you. Yes. And in thinking of disclosure, because you and I have been texting back and forth about this, you know, a little bit lately as well. And it's a big word. It's a big topic right now. Right. And you are going to be way more informed about this than I am. A lot of my work is more in the realm of theology and stuff like that, but I have a great interest in this, but I'm really more of an armchair interestee when it comes to a lot of this. But you're going to know a lot more as far as information is concerned. But, you know, everybody's talking about disclosure. There's a lot of whistleblowers coming out right now. There's press conferences being held, and it's been going on now for quite a few years. But in terms of what we were talking about before, which is that external events often mirror something that's happening in the collective unconscious, in humanity. Well, for one, let's just talk about disclosure. Talk to us a little bit about that and some of the goings on, some of the interesting things, some of the important things. And then also, maybe we can bring it back around to even discuss spiritually, or whatever word one wants to use, what maybe is this whole concept of disclosure, even the wording, even the word itself, because that all plays on internal archetypes and whatnot. What might that be speaking to in terms of what's happening within the collective? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, first of all, you haven't said this, so I may be putting words in your mouth. So forgive me. Mm-hmm. See, for me, before we go into disclosure, I think that we've got this.
Take your liberty, go wherever you want, man. Seriously.
I just think we've got this thing all wrong. Mm-hmm. It's not about the hardware. It's not about the back engineering. It is in the sense of what the military and what governments around the world, but it's about the change in consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's about the change in consciousness, because we don't have the spiritual maturity to deal with even the hardware that we have. You see what we do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm one of those people who say this is all wrong. It's sexy. It's nice to talk about, but unless we change the way we think, we're going to destroy ourselves. We're going to either have an extinction level event, or we're going to cause one, or both. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, getting back to, you know, just Dr. Greer coming out, what was it, 10 days ago, whatever, about, which was very powerful. I watched it, his press conference with, again, other military people who were risking everything to come out and say the government has been, I've been witness to some of these things, bodies, the technology, of course, Brother Grush, the intelligence agents who's come out and has kind of put it all out there. And it's an exciting time. I don't trust my government. I'm sorry to say. I know, and by that I mean people are waiting for disclosure. If someone's been lying to you for 76 years, all of a sudden they're not going to just come out and tell you things that you already know. I don't need the government to affirm me.
Right.
But people do. And so even now, they're controlling the narrative. We're changing the nomenclature, the vocabulary. UFOs are now UAPs. All of this is in the hand of the military. Tic Tac, the pilots, the government, they're the ones who are the experts.
Mm-hmm.
So they're controlling the narrative, but it's still an important time. I don't want to poo-poo this all away. However, I happen to think, and there'll be blowback, and this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. I think our governments and governments of the world are saying we can't keep this secret anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to get out ahead of it. When you're a kid and you tell a story and a lie and you get caught, or you think you're going to get caught, you come clean. You didn't tell them, I told them. I
Right.
think that's what's happening here. Maybe oversimplification, but I'm pretty sure. So, having said that, going back to the spiritual, which I think it all is, we're being asked to grow up. We're being asked to say that, we don't have to be affirmed from outside, whether it's our political parties, whether it's our governments, whether it's our religions. And so there has to be a shift in consciousness. And so it can be messy, it can be lethal, but as we were saying with Bill, there's some interesting times we're going into, and we have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I had a choice with these experiences about how I was going to live my life. Fear,
Mm-hmm.
love, but whatever, it had to change. There are people who've had these experiences, and it's hard to change.
Mm-hmm.
It may have entrenched more fear. Now I'm deeper into it. But collectively and individually, we have a choice to make as we go forward as a species and, as individuals, the macro and micro. And sometimes it takes that little push. And we're being pushed now to be more, what does it mean to be human? There's I forget who says this. I'm quoting Dr. Cornel West here, one of my favorite philosophers, but he's asking, and I think that's what we're asking. Yes, Desjardins says we're spiritual beings having a human experience. I have no problem with that, but let's just go back to the basic. What does it mean to be human? A featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces, whose body will soon be the culinary delight of terrestrial worms.
It's a girl. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Not the pretty picture.
Yeah.
But is that all we are? Or are we, as Chardin and others say, more? And if we are more, then we sure as hell need to start acting like it.
Yeah.
Because we're going to perish together as fools. As King said, if we can't live as brothers and sisters. So that's where we are. That's the spiritual dilemma here. So I'm not talking about religion. This is bigger than religion in a lot of ways. But this is, who are we? Who are we? Are we what I just read? Or are we more transcendent than that? And if you really, really believe that we are, then we need to start acting like it.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure, man. And what I brought up today, even in terms of messianism, right?
That messianic. Someone's going, Daddy, come save me. Mommy, come save me. I'm still a child. Government, come save me. Priest, come save me.
Yeah. And when you and I think sometimes I was talking with somebody today just via some comments on social media about, quote unquote deconstruction, Derridian deconstruction. And they were talking about the fact that they felt like they had fully deconstructed a particular idea, and they were talking about fundamentalist Christianity in particular. And I'm not there to psychoanalyze anybody in public, but my private thoughts were, well, it looks very much to me like that old worldview is still at work in you, just under a different name and under a different banner, because you still very much are acting the way that a fundamentalist believer would. And that's There are still people who are quote unquote original sinners out there who are just by default worse than other people. There's a very specific way of being saved, whether it's believing or thinking a certain way, ascribing to a certain philosophical worldview. And then there's a kind of messianic approach, apocalyptic and messianic approach to life that you have as well, which maps right over top of the fundamentalist worldview that you claim to have made an exodus from. And I'm not saying I'm beyond that or above that, because I'm certainly not. I find that in myself all the time. But one thing I find interesting is that within Western interpretations of UFO phenomenon, that at least the messianic portion is still there, where some equate disclosure with a sort of messianic unveiling of maybe a superior race who's here to save us. And like you said, maybe, who the hell knows? I certainly don't. But to have that in mind as like, okay, this is what's going to happen, and to sort of abdicate our own responsibility and put it on the shoulders of some hypothetical something that might happen sometime in the future, is to really underestimate ourselves and underestimate the reality of whatever it is that we actually are, whether we are just a bag of bones and flesh born between urine and feces, or if we are divine consciousness that peers through the eyes of that featherless mammal.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's dangerous.
Yeah,
I think it's just as dangerous.
And I understand it. No hate or disrespect.
No.
But
and listen, we grew up in it. But boy, this is going to sound, but Paul said, listen, when I was a child, I thought like a child.
Yeah.
And he went, and then I had to put away childish things.
Yeah.
And I get it, because we're all at different phases of evolution. Someone's going to come to me and say, boy, that was pretty arrogant. And maybe it is, but I'm speaking from my own experience. But I'm also saying, because look, I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, one of the most liberal denominations, on the planet, as far as, Protestant Reformation.
Sure.
But there are people in my congregation, and maybe me, that I'm dogmatic in my liberalism. Okay, so I'm accusing more conservative brothers and sisters, like, you're not getting it, but meanwhile I'm not getting it.
For sure.
You see, I see the speck, but not the log. But again, we started this talking about my own experience, and your question was, at the beginning of the show, was before we had the technical difficulty, are they mutually exclusive, your beliefs and having these experiences? I don't think they are, but I think of T.S. Eliot, right? I love Thomas Stearns Eliot. At the end of all our exploring, well, I mean, it's kind of contradictory. We will never cease from exploration, but at the end of all our exploration, we will come to the place we started and know it for the very first time. Which says many things, but life is cyclical. It's not this linear thing. You can't step in the same river twice. I'm different. So now I'm revisiting some of the things that I was taught, and seeing them in a different light, and maybe knowing some things, really knowing them as well as myself for the very first time. So I'm still exploring. Probably next time we talk, there'll be some more things that maybe have shifted and changed, but I think that's part of the human experience. But I also want to say to listeners that for those who are seekers, don't forget that the whole point of seeking is to find something. You don't get points just because you're seeking. You can go to your grave seeking, and I'm not saying you know everything, but you want to come away with, I found some truths. I may not have found the truth, but I found some truths. And so that's what the quest is, and we're all on a quest, whether we believe it or not. But I have a lot of friends, and sometimes I engage it, sometimes I don't, but they have this they reject Christianity, or at least Christianity they were raised with, or Orthodox Christianity, but they've just layered it over with, good extraterrestrials. Usually they're blonde, are going to come and save us before we destroy ourselves. And like I said, that may be true. Maybe there is no prime directive. Maybe some races have it and some don't. But I wouldn't. That's not house money you're playing with.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. And again, it's like, in Lurianic Kabbalah, you have the concept of Simsum, right? Where, and this is not really what it's trying to prove within the Kabbalist system, but, in the concept of Simsum is that God creates a space within God's self where the divine light is not as intense as it is, let's just say, right smack dab in the center to water things down and make it kind of easy to understand. So that creation can come to be within God, but not so overwhelmed and overpowered by God that it's like squelched or what's the word I'm looking for? Stamped out, right? So infinity lets that which is finite come forth within it and grow into infinity itself. But if infinity overpowers the finite the moment it creates it, it consumes it. So the infinite creates a space within itself that allows that which is finite to grow into infinity. And I think concepts of messianism function like that overpowering concept of God that stamp out our own inner divine potential and make us lean too heavily on something we think is coming. I mean, like, you grew up in the Baptist church, I grew up in the Pentecostal church. We both probably grew up believing that the rapture was imminent, right?
Oh, yeah.
That any day Jesus was going to come and suck us off the planet and we were going to leave our pants behind and all that. In fact, growing up as a kid, the pranks I used to play on my siblings were to like leave my clothes in a pile on the floor to make them think I got raptured and they got left behind. And, those are the kind of things you do in a Christian household. But like, where was I even going with that? I don't know, somewhere. Okay. Yeah. But like, so you have that concept of a rapture and we believed it so literally that there were people who literally were racking up credit card debt, believing that they were going to leave all their credit card debt for the Antichrist. I know people personally who have discouraged their children from pursuing higher education because there's no real point, because the rapture is so imminent. I know people personally who have spent small fortunes because they've believed, the rapture was imminent. And so all of the potential that was represented in their child pursuing higher education or in them maybe saving what they spent or whatever, all of that potential was just poured out onto the hot pavement and evaporated instead of being put in a reservoir to become something greater because they believed that any day this was going to happen. So it's not on my shoulders. I don't have to become anything. And I wonder, in the archetypal language of the unconscious, even if disclosure, if there isn't a juxtaposition of the idea of messianism, as in the thing coming from the outside to save us, the disclosure of something out there that's going to save us, and the disclosure of something within us, which is what actually saves us, is us realizing who we are as opposed to realizing what's out there that's going to come and rescue us. Like, so when Paul talked about his understanding of the gospel, for example, his understanding of the gospel was to unveil Christ within. And he said his whole mission was to make known among the Gentiles this mystery, which was that Christ had always been hidden within them, not outside of them. That was his mission, to disclose that mystery, to make that mystery known. And so I wonder, because words like that just trigger things for me. And I wonder, like a word like disclosure, for example, what bell that's ringing inside of us, whether we know that's the bell that's being rung or not. When so many of us are looking for something out here to save us, if maybe there isn't a deeper bell being rung, a singing bowl in our souls being struck, if you will, that's the sound that it's meant to bring forth, is the sound that maybe we are the thing that needs to rise up.
This is what Buddhism is telling us. This is what mysticism tells us. I mean, I think this is what any genuine spiritual path is trying to get us to see, trying to disclose, if you will. You use the word. But you see the resistance to that for eons. For eons. It's just easier. We see it in our political figures. I'm the only one who can save you. I'm the only one. I'll protect you. We see that all through history and even now. And you see how that triggers people and how anything against that, any person who says, no, don't fall for that. You see, well, just how dangerous it can be.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the struggle. That's the struggle. Whether you're atheist, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, that's the good news. That's the gospel, if you will.
Yeah.
But the good news is that Howard Thurman, and I know you've heard of him, who was Dr. King's mentor, was a very, very, very wise theologian and mystic. And he said, every day, he said a couple things, but every day we have to realize there's a crown already held over our heads that we are trying to grow tall enough to wear. He also said that the truth, any truth that you find in religion, is there because it's true. It's not true simply because it's found in the religion.
Yeah.
But these pithy little sayings and what have you, but they fall on deaf ears, and you can really feel like one, just crying in the wilderness. To me, the key to all of this is to be able to be grounded and centered in what it is you feel you believe. And to be able to weather the distractions.
Yeah.
Because it's going to get crazy. It's going to get more crazy with disclosure, with is this person telling the truth, is this person not, is there disinformation, what's going on geopolitically, what's going on, we got an election year coming up. And if you don't have a sense of self, if you are looking from your validation from outside, it's going to be a rough ride.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rough ride. And so I believe that this is what we've been talking about for the past 45, 50 minutes, is the noise, the distraction of outside, and how to weather that.
Yeah.
And that's my whole message. Whether their UFOs exist or not, which we know they do now, but don't get caught up in the hype of that. Find out who it is and what it is that you are and what you believe. Was it Nietzsche, right? If you can find the why of life, you can endure anyhow.
Yes. Yep.
And that's what that consciousness is, whether you want to call it Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, spirit, soul, whatever. That's what you want to tap into. And that's the game changer.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that from outside.
No. And that's my dog's going nuts in the background here.
Okay, mine's upstairs quiet. But
okay. So just pardon that, guys.
Yes.
Her bark is far worse than her bite. But whenever there's chaos externally, we always look for external saviors, be they political. We're in an election year, like you said. So for some, it's still Trump. Some are still believing in Trump as the savior. Some are looking for
Biden as the savior. Government, it's outside of me.
It's all outside. Some are looking for some third party to come up. Some are looking for Jesus to return. Some are looking for some whatever. And everybody's looking outside. And I love, and this is what Nietzsche actually warned about when he talked about the death of God in the gay science, right? And so the madman shows up with a lantern during the daytime, and he's going around with a lantern during the day, which one does not normally hold a lantern during the day because one does not need a lantern when it's light out. And he says, oh, I've come too soon, because he's like, you don't yet realize what's happened, that when you've snuffed out this light, which has been at the center of culture for all these 2,000 years, you didn't realize how dark things would get. So I've come too soon. you're still living off of yesterday's light, but it will fade. And then the madman says, thunder and lightning take time. You know, you might see the lightning, but you might not hear the thunder for a few seconds, right? So like when you snuff out that central axiom, it takes time before you hear the thunder or experience the darkness that comes as a result of snuffing that thing out. And so when that darkness comes, or when we hear the chaos of that thunder, we start to look outside. We start to reach for politicians. We start to reach for different types of theologies, different things that will save us. But I think real disclosure, I think the most powerful kind of disclosure we can experience is this: the reality of, quote unquote, the Christ in you, whatever that word means to whoever you are and whatever tradition you come from. As one who is more perennialist in my outlook on things, I can use the word Christ in me, and I mean what you mean when you use another word. But I'm talking about finding that reality that is in you, that is a guiding, centering, grounding principle that will see me through the chaos and the tumult of whatever is happening out here. The disclosure of that reality, that's what it's all about. And any real encounter with anything approximating the divine does not make you dependent on the thing you encounter. It reveals to you the reality of what it is that's within you. That's what I believe.
Yes. Well,
Michael,
Camus said it. Camus said it, right?
Mhm.
In the midst of winter, I found within me
Yeah.
an invincible summer.
Yes, sir.
I mean, there it is.
That's it. Yeah.
There
We
it
have
is.
just a couple minutes left, man. Do you want to just see us out with a word, something that's on your heart? I mean, even if you just want to rip off what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you and Bill for having me. And I hope we do it again, which I know we will.
Yes.
And I just wanted to just tell people that, you know, you don't have to give up anything that you believe. You may have to re-examine it, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. As Jeff was saying, you know, we're both educated in the West. So, you know, the Western cosmology is in us. It's even if we don't want it. I could say I don't believe in God, but I'm still celebrating Christmas. Or you know what I mean? I'm still influenced by that.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is that to as an experiencer, and mostly as a human being, live your life. You know, live your life. Make it a good life. Be as authentic as you can, because this is all we really know that we have is right now.
Yes.
And tomorrow hasn't happened. The past is past, but we're creating our tomorrows by what we do today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. UFOs or not, God or not, extraterrestrials or not, we do have today.
Yes.
And so, you know, see carpe diem, seize it.
Yes.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yep. You better preach, my friend. That's it.
Hey, brother, we both can.
We both can.
Yes.
Michael, it's been an honor conversing with you the last 45 minutes, my friend. It really has. We will do it again.
Have to.
And I look forward to it, man. I look
Me
forward
too.
to it.
Me too, brother. I was excited. You got me thinking, because I'm always thinking. And it's nice to be able to have someone to share that with.
Agreed. And same, mutual. So, friends, thanks again for joining us tonight for Soul School Sojourn. We'll be back next week. Andrea will be with us, I believe. So until then, peace and class dismissed.